Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the Advertising and Marketing Manager, and I get to be your host today. We will welcome our sponsor today, which is Williamsburg Weavers and Spinners Guild. We really appreciate when the guild step up and do a sponsorship. We love that. And they have a relationship with our guests today also. So thank you so much, Williamsburg Spinners and Weavers Guild. We love having you here today, and thank you for sponsoring us. We will, as always, take questions at the end of the hour, about 45 minutes in. If you would, please put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. I can't see them very well on seeing them in the chat. So thank you for doing that. Today we have Karen Clancy. She's going to be our guest today. Karen started sewing her own clothes in 4-H, and then she did painting and crocheting and woodworking. And she's always been drawn to using her hands and creating. Nothing really fed her soul though until she started weaving and dyeing and spinning. She has explored different methods of weaving, everything from tiny looms, triangular looms, rectangular looms, potholder looms, of course, and then finally floor looms. And many workshops and classes later, she was hired into the weaving shop at Colonial Williamsburg. She's been with the foundation now for 34 years. She has worn many hats there, and she has taught apprentices and journeymen to spin, weave, use natural dye, according to the 18th century sources. And she's also created programs for guest and special interest groups. She's also taught at John C. Campbell Folk School, which she's coming up with a new class there soon. And she has overcome obstacles like severe psoriatic arthritis. And as you will see today, weaving keeps her going. Welcome, Karen. It's wonderful to have you here today.
I'm glad to be here.
Hey, Karen.
Hey.
So we're going to start off. What is your favorite tea?
Well, depending on the time of year, but right now it's Lady Grey in my 18th century mug I have to use at work. It was a potter down in North Carolina that made it.
All right. So how did you, I've read some about how you got started with 4-H and everything, but how did you get into weaving?
Well, it was, like a lot of us were exposed to lots of things when we were kids. And so it was, my mom had this group, and it was her outlet for like 2 hours a week. It was called Willing Workers. And it was a bunch of farm ladies that got together and they would craft. And that's how I got introduced to, this thing called a potholder loom. And so we got creative with it. And we ran out of the loopers and they were expensive. So we just started making loops out of yarn and figured out that was a pain. And so we just started looping it around the pegs and messing around with it. So that's my introduction to weaving.
How clever. Well, how did you find Williamsburg?
All right. Well, in college, my roommate had relatives that worked at Colonial Williamsburg, and I just thought it was fascinating. And she was in the wig maker shop. And so in our senior year, she made me sign a contract that I would come down to Williamsburg for the summer. And okay, we were probably 3 sheets to the wind is what it was. And so I said, sure. So graduated on Sunday, packed on Monday, drove on Tuesday, and was it was a summer intern in 1987 and haven't left.
Lucky Williamsburg.
I don't know. You need to tell my boss that.
Okay. You studied sociology in college. How do you think sociology impacts on what you do either at Williamsburg or on your own?
All right. So there's different tracks within any discipline. And I wasn't going to I realized really soon that I was never going to go into the social work end of things. I'd be nuttier than the clients. I I'm a fixer. And so I'd want to fix everything. And I knew that I would be probably frustrated for the majority of a career in that. So I went with macro, which was more demographics and doing number crunches, census taking, like population stuff. And, I focused in on, the dynamics of people, basically, and communities. So because half our job is talking to people and from all walks of life, it just kind of was a good fit. And I took a lot of math and a lot of art, which doesn't make sense because they're two parts of your brain. And I had more sociology classes, and I'm not taking a fifth year. So we wound up with sociology, but it all fits because math, we use constantly in weaving, and the art, with, generating structure and color. And I get to tell people all about it.
Well, it's interesting. I should keep a running list of how many math people I interview. Math and science shows up time and time again. So I'm not surprised about the math at all. Well, can you talk some more? I mentioned that how you got to Williamsburg, Colonial Williamsburg, but can you talk a little bit more about what your roles and responsibilities are there at the site?
So I'm a supervisor, and I've became a supervisor through a curriculum. I had to go through a pretty rigid curriculum for spinning, weaving, and natural dyeing, which helped kind of enhance in learning the history along the way and doing that research. My boss was looking to retire. He threw me the keys after 2 years and said, have at it, have a good time. So my role, they've kept trying to pull me back into management a lot. At one point I was running 7 trade shops. But about 1.5 years ago, I stepped down just to run this shop solely. And so I take them through a curriculum, building a good foundation. It's a 5-level curriculum. And it's kind of well-rounded spinning by necessity. But the historic trades in the 18th century, it was a 7-year apprenticeship for weaving and a 7-year apprenticeship for dyeing. Spinning was a skill, but didn't require 7 years. But you can't have any of the other trades without spinning. So my go-to response is you don't irritate spinners because they can make or break you all the way down through the line. So, I critique, we go through different types of preparation of different fibers, being able to do the foundation structures so that they can build on those structures, using different size yarns and copying and using stuff from the 18th century, so no modern stuff. The natural dyeing, which we're gearing up to do on Saturday, there's just lots of prep work with scouring and mordanting, and it's different for each of the fibers, cellulose or protein. So in sticking with 18th century recipes and discovering different applications, trying to stay away from the icky bits like sugar of lead and arsenic and mercury. I'm nuts enough. I don't need mercury to help me out. So it's taking one step at a time and applying those things, and it's repeating results. That's really important as well. Anybody can get lucky once. So for example, in their level 2 or 3, I can't remember which one it is, they have to make 4 coverlets. Usually the first one is okay. The second one, they get cocky and they have some more mistakes. A third one, they almost get it. And the fourth one, they nail it usually. So the last one to kind of graduate to become journeyman is that they have to take a piece from the collection, spin it, dye it, weave it. And depending on the size, they may have to do more than one. So it may take a year to do it.
Now, for someone who's not been to Williamsburg and you're talking about doing a dyeing day, for example, now you're doing, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're doing it for 2 reasons. One is the show, the display and the education, right? But
Right.
the other part of it is you use the yarn you dye, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
So it's two-pronged. That our hand spun, just because we can't spin enough for the volume that we do, because we make bolts of fabric. It's not like just one set of tablecloth or table napkins. It's bolts of cloth, anywhere from 18 to 30 yards. So that's where the math comes in. And I just watch their heads explode. That's half of my fun, to figure out the math. But it's understanding proportions and, weight of fiber and how important it is. We're doing a little bit of a kind of a sidebar experiment with water source, whether it's got, the chlorine in the city water versus, distilled water. Does that make a big difference? We've done experiments, but the yarn that we generally make goes for sale for the most part. After we dye it, they're one skein wonders, because they're all different colors, getting the apprentices used to the dyes, how they work, and understanding those foundational kinds of characteristics, how long this stays in the pot, what's the concentrations, how long do you keep it in the pot? Yeah, there's a whole lot of things. But we do in earnest. In fact, we're doing one right now, which is called Thunder and Lightning Cloth. And it was something that was written in around 1780. And this guy wrote this whole thing out of how to do this particular cloth. So when you're reading it, you're like, holy cow, this is tie-dye in the 18th century, which is really kind of crazy. So it's a brown warp, and then we choked off, I don't know how many skeins and how much yardage, but I know that's a lot. So we choked it off 18 times, and it's white, but then we dipped it in yellow, and then you choke it off 18 more times, and you dip it in brown, and it's only in the weft. So it's going to look kind of funky, but we're doing it. I think Washington could have rocked some dye, actually.
I bet he never thought that would be said about himself either.
No, I don't think.
Well, do you consider yourself more of a weaver or a historian? Or?
It depends on the day, actually. When I don't know about anybody else, but sometimes it's just a mood thing. And sometimes I'm just really in the mood. It's like, oh, just let me have it. Let me just beat and bang and let me see, and then play games with yourself, like timing, like, let me see how much I can get done in an hour. Or let me try this, I want to sample this. I've had something in my head that's been brewing. So let me just see if I can do it. And then some days it's just, I really need to explore something, but let me look something up. Let me try to see if I can connect it to the past. Or you'll read something and let me see if I can find another document that supports it. So then you go down these rabbit holes. And then you come up for air, and you're not sure if you're, where you're at, and you're more confused than when you started. So then you go back to weaving. So.
Well, you have my admiration, because so many times I just struggle to weave something, just try to get it to, not fall apart and be sleazy or whatever. So I can't imagine what it's like to not only try to weave something so that it works, but also from the point of view that it has to be historically correct. Even though you may think, oh, I don't want to do it that way. You have to make it historically correct. To me, that's a whole different take on weaving.
It is, and we're kind of locked in this box, so to speak. But there's always new things. I mean, I started when Colonial Williamsburg was just implementing computers. I mean, it was a new thing. And with the digital age through the years, and how you can share information with a touch of a button these days, and there's so much that is still being discovered on dusty shelves in archives. So there's so much out there that's relevant. And and it's still kind of a springboard for modern weavers too. I was working on, a couple of things and realized that I was doing supplemental warp, and shout out to Deb Eason, thank you. I didn't realize I was doing it, or that's what the name was. Mm-hmm. So there's still correlation with the history, in the historical fabrics and textiles. They're still relevant in the 21st century. It's just a different spin on it all. No pun intended.
Well, when people come through and you're doing your thing,
yeah,
weaving, spinning, whatever, what do you want them to come away with? What is one or two of the most important ideas or concepts that you want them to come away with after visiting the weaving and dyeing studios?
I think, if nothing else, it always depends on the audience. When you got school group after school group after school group, all I want to have them do is walk out and go, that was pretty cool. When you've got, those wonderful, 7th and 8th graders that are on their phones in the back of the room. So right now we have many seasons, and right now we have empty nesters, a lot that are more deep divers, and more inquisitive. And I think at the end of the day, to appreciate craftsmanship of anything that is made by hand. And I encourage, especially kids, we got a lot of homeschoolers right now, to try something with their hands, because we're always going to need somebody working with our hands. I don't care what it is. And then I give them permission to fail if they don't like something, but to just try something, and not to, beat themselves up because it's not perfect. And if they don't like it, there's tons of stuff to go into. So, I want people to kind of walk out and go, gosh, that was really cool. But understanding too, how they can look at a piece of fabric or textile or a piece of clothing in a store and go and have a different perspective, of, how it came to be. Even though it's mechanized today, the process is still the same. And so that you go over, under on some level to build a textile. And so if they walk out and they look at something a little differently, or have that little nugget in their back of their brain, maybe it's just like, yeah, maybe, there's a connection to the past. I didn't realize it was there.
Well, that's a tall order, but I think you do it quite well.
Yeah. Talk to the 8th graders I just talked to yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're all stupid. When you're in 8th grade, everybody's stupid but you. So.
Oh yeah. But there, I usually take cotton that doesn't, that's still in this seed, and I start throwing it at them. And then we have a race to see who can pick up the fiber the quickest. And it usually, it usually works. So.
And again, I have to say, I've not been to Williamsburg, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but it sounds like it's a lot of hands-on. They don't just walk through and watch what you're doing, that you do a lot more hands-on stuff.
Before COVID, we did a little bit more of that. We kind of had to pare back with handing stuff out. And, but you try to engage them and meet them at their level, no matter who it is. And sometimes it's really hard in just being more intuitive to what they want versus what you think they need to know. And so we call it data dumping. So I'd rather not, hit them over the head with lots of stuff, because who wants to hear lecture all the time?
Yeah.
So, and if you make it enjoyable, it tends to stick a little better. So I try to use humor a lot. Stupid jokes really work. And it, I think we're the number one best, with surveys and stuff, that we're the top, in terms of the experience people receive. So yeah, we do hands-on, we do workshops. I started up a beta test for other historic trades. There's 22 historic trades at Williamsburg.
Mhm.
So I proposed that we get some student looms and try, we'll thread them up, let people come in, and for, a nominal fee, they weave off a dish towel in a couple hours. And that's been really well received. Done some bigger programming with a millinery shop that they come in for a day and weave off their piece of just plain fabric. They do natural dyeing and the two group switch. Natural dye embroidery yarn, and then they spend the day with the milliners embroidering historic patterns. And we go to the collection and look at embroidered pieces from the past. So that's been really well received as well.
I bet.
Yeah.
Well, let me jump over to something you talked about. You talked about being the master weaver or head weaver. So how did you, it sounds like you have a journeyman program there also?
The journeyman program, we're still in the works. When you hit journeyman level, even historically, that's kind of where you stay.
Well, how did you become a master weaver?
So the curriculum I had to do, this is my final project. And it was a small piece in a notebook that was wrapped up in cloth and stuck in the rafters of a London townhouse. So they discovered it in the 80s. Colonial Williamsburg bought it. There were 3 scraps of fabric in the back. In fact, a couple weeks ago, we saw it in situ at our library. So I had like a 2 by 2 inch by 2 inch square piece to work by to figure out how to build this fabric. The blue is wool and the white is linen. And the tricky bit was to get everything to kind of come together at the corners. And this is, what was basically a supplemental warp in the vertical. So I had to spin it, dye it, bleach the linen, and then make the fabric. And I can't remember how many yards I made, but this is one of the jackets that I made. Or actually I had the milliners make because I don't sew. If you lived at my house, we'd all be in a toga, I'm not sewing. But it was all the work that we had to do, that I put everybody through is the spinning, the weaving, the dyeing, to execute the final piece. So, and the kicker was, that one of our departments said that we'd never be able to do it. It was too complex. And I'm like, yep, wave that little red flag in front of me and I'll make sure that I can do it. So I pulled it off. It took me a while. It took me about 2 weeks to figure it out. Because I didn't have the understanding of supplemental warps. But once I kind of figured it out, and then it was about a yard's worth of, tweaking to get the squares to look like squares and to everything to meet in the corners. So, and the compliment to me was that we have a licensing department here and they were looking for inspirations for textiles. So this pattern was used in a line of table runners, tablecloths, napkins, and sold for retail. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah. That's amazing that you got that. So I want to make clear. So you found an old piece of cloth and you figured out how to weave it. And that was your project.
That's it.
Master weaver. Oh my gosh. Like I said earlier, I'm just glad I can weave something, let alone make it historical. That is amazing. Well, so when you are weaving on your own, and also when you weave at Williamsburg, what's your go-to structure? What do you like to weave?
Again, it's kind of a mood thing, but for me, because I'm tending to be more production than anything else. And I love, and this is going to sound really, benign, but I love making towels and I love plain weave and all the different structures that you can do with plain weave and how you can manipulate it. And there's just something very calming about it. And it's kind of like your favorite pair of slippers, It's a comfort. I can, I've woven a lot of different structures, and don't get me wrong, I don't mind, but some days, because of my arthritis, some days I just can't do, a lot of footwork. So, the plain weave gives me, enough variety so that I can still come up with, something interesting and pleasing to me, and play around with color and pattern and the warps and the wefts. So that's my go-to.
Well, do you feel pressure when you have to come up with a pattern? Because you sell a lot of this, right, in the shops?
A lot of it goes to the curatorial department, and they use it in the exhibits. And
well, that's even worse. Do you ever feel pressure like, oh my gosh, I got to come up with something really good? Or
well, partly, so it's a collaboration. Right now we're doing Dimity. So they needed Dimity for a couple of exhibits, and they really didn't care what it looked like. So we went to the collection, we looked at old Dimity pieces that we have on in our cold storage, which, talk about a rabbit hole. Holy cow. You just want to just live in there. It's so cool. So we picked a couple of designs and we modified them a little bit, just because we don't have 60-inch wide looms, so that they're going to be a little smaller. So we just proportionately kind of changed a little bit of the width of some of the stripes, and they're happy as clams. So, and what was the other thing that we were doing for them? Oh, right. So during COVID, one of the exhibit houses, the With House, had an 18th century four-poster bed with these bed hangings and bed skirts and canopies and all that frou-frou stuff. And they had a trim around it, which is like a checkerboard. But it was out of wool, and the moths got into it and ate a lot of it up. So they wanted it out of linen. And so we figured it out, how to duplicate the look with linen. And that took a lot of back and forth with the curators, trying to get the right size, trying to get the right width, how big is the checker in the board. It was a lot of back and forth, and we thought we were done with 80 yards, but then they found more pieces, and so we've had to make another 40, 50 yards, and we're doing it on a floor loom. It's 70, I think it's 70 ends per inch. And we're kind of done with it.
80 yards. I cannot fathom that. It's just amazing.
That's why I have apprentices.
True. Well, you work all day at weaving and dyeing and doing what you do there. How do you keep the passion and the energy and find the time to do your own thing at your house?
Well, yeah, I joke around that, I spin at night in front of the TV, and I joke around it's how I get through baseball season. 182 games is a lot of games. So, you spin, and then, something may, inspire you, like Convergence. And I'm in the process of finishing up installation and beadboard. This is my she shed. I'm so excited.
We're all so envious.
It's 12 by 20, and the rough-in is in. The insulation is mostly in. Beadboard's going up hopefully tomorrow, or next week anyway. So another about 3 weeks or so, I should be moving stuff in, because I've taken over 4 rooms. So, I'm always, it's that kind of cherry on the top of the sundae. I do stuff here at work, but you'll see something that really trips your trigger and going, oh gosh, I got to try that. So I'll build warps and just have them handy so I can just load it, at a moment's notice. And I've got 3 looms and 2 or 3 spinning wheels, and it's all about the stuff. So I just have to keep the cats away from it.
Well, I have to note that in this picture, this tunic that's hanging there, that you're wearing it right now, right?
Yep.
It's just lovely.
Yeah, it was going to be 7 yards. I was going to make a couple of things out of it. I think it'd be really cool for bib, like a cool bib overalls, but yeah, I think that's ship sailed. But I had the milliners, the mistress of the shop, Janae, and I said, look, this is kind of what I'm looking for, because I'm going to Convergence. It's my first one, and I want to have something I can wear. So it's 40s twos linen. And I dyed some with indigo, and then I dyed some with fustic and overdyed it with indigo. And then I took about a half a yard and dipped that in indigo for some of the trim and the piping and that sort of thing, and slapped some buttons from, the buttons from grandma on it. And so, yeah, I had something to wear for Convergence, and it had pockets. That was the only thing it had to have, was pockets.
I'm with you on that. Pockets are important.
Yep.
And speaking of pockets, we'll have to talk about that in Williamsburg Guild. Speaking of pockets.
Oh, yeah.
Now you also dye. You dye at work, and then you also dye at home. And I'm always amazed when I talk to people about why they dye. Everybody has all these different reasons why, because it's a lot of work. So what's the attraction of dyeing for you?
It's not white.
Could you expand upon that, Karen?
Oh, okay. So for me, it's duplicating results. I want to see if I can do it.
Really?
Yeah. And I want to, and I always want to push it. It's like, oh, just one more dip of indigo. Let's see what we get. Let's leave it in an extra 20 minutes. Let's see what we get. What if we hike this up, or what if we tweak this? What if we add this? Looking at historical, recipes, and you're like, wait a minute, I think they're missing something. And different sheep breeds, that they take dye different. It's subtle, but it's different. And just to explore, what I can get. Sometimes it's with a project in mind. Other times it's, I'll do a whole bunch and I know it's going to get used. But it's the prep work. It's, mortating, scouring. I mean, it's hurry up and wait. There's just not, it's not sexy, but once you get to the dye, you just know at the end it's going to be great. It's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner. It's a lot of prep, a lot of cleanup, maybe just 10 minutes in the pot. But there's that anticipation, I think is it's like Christmas kind of,
Yeah.
Sometimes you can predict, and sometimes you're like, oh, that's a do-over.
It's a learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now the picture on the right is Williamsburg, correct? And then the one on the left is your stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep. So the stuff on the right, we do, we try to do a variety of fibers. So the stuff that's along the wellhead is all quilt squares. They're fat quarters for quilters. And that is to kind of get those rich saturated colors on cotton. Mm-hmm. And so I think we did 40 some that day. And then the dark blue on the top rack, it was for my buddy Pam Howard, set for a project she was doing. So, I can't remember what we had. I know we had cochineal, we had logwood, we had a small pot of turmeric, and then we had indigo. So. And the same kind of stuff on, that I use at my house as well. I use the same stuff. So, and I do roving too, which has been a little trickier just because you don't want it to felt, because it hits those, scouring, mortating, dyeing, washing. You got more of a potential for it to be really, really not so opened up afterwards. But yeah.
So, what would you say is the piece of work that you're most proud of, and why?
Well, tongue in cheek, it's the one that just came off the loom is the best one.
Well, that's not necessarily tongue in cheek. I mean, you could say that's,
you know, a long time ago, one of the folks that was in charge of historic trades said, just make it and forget it. You know, your job is to make it and move on, you know, to the next one. So with that said, you still have the ones that you are fondest of. So for me, I guess it was my journeyman piece. I think it was because it was the whole process. And it was that real sense of accomplishment. There's another piece that was called a cross and diamond diaper out of Bronson. And that was kind of tricky, but it was so delicate and so pretty. And it was a diamond, and then it had a little cross in the middle. If you do it on really fine fiber, I think it was a 22s cotton, I think. And it just was really delicate and beautiful, but it's still simple. So those are the two things that I think I'm the most partial to, and they have the best feeling about. I don't know about you, but sometimes I just, you know, you start in on a project and you think you're going to like it. And then you're just like, you know, I'm not really tickled with this. So, and some of them surprise you. You're like, okay, I've done, you know, this before, but then it's like, holy Toledo, this is really cool. You know, so, you know, there's those serendipity moments. And, you know, I've done it a long time, and that sometimes it's a blur. And when you start a new curriculum, when you've got new people coming in, if you've got to hire, you know, you're back to the beginning again, you know, so it's like, okay, we're going to do, you know, we're doing a huck, we're doing a plain weave, we're doing a rib or a cord. We're like, here we go again. But every time, you know, that happens, you're like, oh yeah, that's really cool. So it doesn't take much to thrill me, let me tell you. So
well, I love that you're so passionate and that you love it so much.
Oh yeah. My third great Aunt Libby from the 1860s was the weaver for our family. And I didn't know it until I started weaving. And so I have her loom. And so that's going to be one of my projects to kind of bring that back to life. It's almost, most of it, she left me 11 reeds. And so there's connections, and I'm going to be on ancestry.com, dadgummit. There's a weaving gene.
There you go.
So,
well, if you hadn't joined Williamsburg, what do you think you'd be doing?
I probably would be in the medical field. Probably.
Really?
Yeah. I was a lab tech for a while before I joined Colonial Williamsburg. Yeah, I was a phlebotomist. I was the one everybody hated. I took their blood. So if you need blood work done, I'm still pretty good. So yeah, I probably would have stayed in the medical field, being in a lab somewhere. So you know, I got thinking about it, and yeah, I think that's probably where I would land, where I probably would have landed. And I looked at my high school yearbook, my senior yearbook, and it said most likely to whatever, and it was to be a lab tech, which is funny.
Really?
Yeah. So who knew?
Were you going around taking people's blood in high school or something?
No, I just thought about it a lot.
Yeah, okay. So what's next for you?
So I've got about 4 years before I'm eligible to retire. So my job, in terms of my job, is to get my apprentices through their curriculum, and, you know, to be a good soldier and, you know, good employee for Colonial Williamsburg, and get through the next 4 years. And then, you know, I get thinking about it and talking to a lot of people. One of the things that we have a hard time doing is getting sourcing for things, for yarns and that sort of thing. But there's also a big need for historical textiles, and that I kind of want to go do that. actually, because there's a Context Weavers in the UK they were the biggest ones for the National Trust. And they've retired and nobody's taken over. Ukraine, we were getting a lot of stuff like linen tape and wool tapes, that kind of thing. And that's, well, we all know what's going on there, but there's just not a lot of people picking up these kinds of, archaic kinds of textiles. And so there's historical buildings, there's repair work on original stuff, reenactor world. So, going into, and because I tend to be more of a production weaver. And so that's kind of where I'm thinking I'm going to be heading, is doing that kind of work.
So if I'm in the Williamsburg area this Saturday, what will I see? No, I said if, I won't.
Oh.
I wish. But what would I see? Help us understand. If we go there Saturday, are we going to watch you all dye? Do we participate in it? What happens Saturday?
Okay, so Saturday we're usually up and running. We have a big pit out back of our shop. So we usually have 100-gallon copper pot full of water. That's our hot water tank. And then we have a pretty good size, maybe about 20-gallon indigo pot, and then 4-gallon copper pots on a grate. And so we have this huge pit that we light fires underneath all of it, get the dyes up and running, get the pots hot, all that good stuff. Got wooden tubs full of yarn and fabric and garments. We re-dye garments a lot when it's sun faded. And then we, one person is the person who's the talking head, basically kind of explaining what we're doing. I'm usually bossing everybody around. So
can I just come and pull up a chair and sit there all day and watch you do this?
Yeah. So you can watch us. There's, sometimes, we'll have guests that come through and we'll remind them we've got dyeing coming up on Saturday. And if you got anything you want us to dye, let us know, because we can always put it in indigo. So we've had baby booties that we put in, baseball caps, hankies out of guys' pockets. And it's one kid wanted to pull off his shorts, and I'm like, no. But yeah, we'll have little small like locks that we'll put in, and we'll hand them to kids or whatever, and we'll have them help time. How long do you think we ought to keep it in the pot? And so they're, timing for us. And so yeah, we do it until about 2-3 o'clock when we run out of stuff usually. And then the cleanup starts for the next 2 or 3 days.
Great.
So,
all right, everybody, if you're in the Williamsburg area this weekend, go see Karen. See the dye-o-rama.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, we've got questions. Shall we take some questions?
Sure.
We got a bunch. All right. I got to get them close so I can read them.
Okay. And this is not tea. It's after 4. Wink, wink.
So the answers will get better and better.
Yeah, better and better.
All right. Kathy Kuhn. She says, I'm one of the 15% of Americans who have not been to Williamsburg. You must come. Oh, I feel bad now. Okay. Then she says 85% of Americans in the United States have been to Williamsburg prior to the death. This is according to the Chamber of Commerce. Does Kathy work at Williamsburg?
Perhaps.
I don't know who that is. Kathy, I'll do my darndest. I'll put it on my bucket list. I feel bad now. All right, Valerie Fritz. So happy to hear you speak of your work. My dear late friend, Charlotte Headley, taught me to spin and weave in the 70s. Then she and Jerry moved to Williamsburg. Enjoyed our time helping there. She spoke of you often. Aww. She was an amazing, inquisitive woman. She misses her friend. I hope Spinning Wheel is contributing to the program there. Thank you for your stories and history today. Hope to visit you again soon. I'm retired now, so I'm digging back into the craft. Well, yay. Welcome, Valerie. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Maxine, what kind of loom do you use? How many shaft, and is it a jack loom? And do you do different kind of looms for different fibers, more fiber, fragile fibers, linen, silk? Okay. Now, I don't know if she's talking about you personally or Williamsburg, so we'll ask it both ways.
Okay. So a lot of historical textiles were linen. So we work a lot with linen. And what I've discovered is that the distance between where the harnesses are to the back beam, the longer it is, the easier it is to weave linen, because it has no give. Even if it's just a few inches, it does make a little bit of a difference. We've got an 8 harness countermarch. And we have a 4 harness counterbalance that we use a lot, and we use both of them a lot. But we can throw anything. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what the fiber is. Doesn't matter how thick or thin it is. They're both the same size width-wise. And you can wrap about the same amount on the back beams. At home, I've got a Gilmore that I've been using a lot, 8 harness. And then I've got one of a rectangle adjustable looms from Carolee, Brad Kaiser, that I play around with a lot. And I can't remember what the other one is that I just got from it's a Norwood. Yeah. So that's waiting for its first warp in my new she shed. So and I use anything.
Somebody was asking about the fabric you wove for your Master Weaver certificate. What was it? And you said it was linen and cotton?
Wool.
Wool. Okay.
All right. The blue is wool. The white is linen.
Oh, okay.
And I learned very quickly. I did a test of about a half a yard and threw it in the wash. Guess what? They shrink at different rates. So it wound up looking like waffle weave,
seersucker,
and seersucker all together.
Well, Sue Garber wants to know, how does one become an apprentice at Williamsburg? That's a great question.
I got to kill one of mine off. No, I'm kidding. So it's an application process like anything else. When there's a position that opens up, you apply like any other job. And we either do Zoom Zoom interviews or in person. There's a little bit of a skills test that we apply, and it weeds people out pretty quick. We get tons of applicants. We do have internships, 10-week paid internships every year. So that's less rigid. But I try to paint a picture that, we're outside dying when it's, 95 degrees and 95% humidity, and you're dealing with tons of hot water, a lot of smoke, you're lifting a lot. So you have to have a physical capability, to do.
And you're wearing a dress.
Long dress. Yes. And it's, there's a lot of, and you got to wash wool, and some of it's really poopy. So, some of this stuff is just not glamorous, but it's, it's stuff that's got to get done. So
I think she just said, never mind.
Yeah. I did have somebody come in and go, I'm interested in being an intern. What does it involve? And I painted the picture, and she goes, I don't like going outside very much.
Oh dear.
And I said, well, you may want to check with the milliners. They don't go out very much. So,
well, speaking of milliners, somebody wanted to know about that. Nancy, I don't know if it's Riley or Ryle, but anyway, she wanted to know what they do there, because they make hats there, right?
Well, milliners, before it becomes that, and later on in the 19th century, milliners, millier, it's seller of 1,000 things. So they focus in on accessories. So it would be hats, pockets, it would be different kinds of things. They do make dresses. They are mantua makers, which is French for dressmaker. And so they do make, so they're both, they're milliners and mantua makers. So they would sell in the 18th century things like tobacco, toothbrushes. They would sell like a small general store. along with a kind of a focus on, creating things or having things already ready-made. There were things that were ready-made already that you would sell.
Well, Michaela McIntosh, hi, Michaela, wants to know, she says that you answer questions, she's assuming. And she goes, and she used to do that at Middleton Place in Charleston. Mm. She wants to know, what is your favorite question that you get? Either because it's funny, kind of goofy, or a question.
I get a lot of different, it depends, but my, like, especially in the summertime, it's like, aren't you hot in that? And I'm like, I'm smoking. But, or they'll say, well, how did you get started in this? They can't believe anybody does this, or how did you do that? They're the how-tos or the how much is, but yeah, you try to come up with comebacks that are, or you turn around and go, aren't you hot in your stuff? I mean, when it's 100 degrees, everybody's hot, so, but you try to just meet them on their level and, but I just try to have fun. If you're not having fun, you might as well be 6 feet under, if you're not laughing, even if at yourself, especially. So.
Well, people are asking, I knew they would. They want to know what's behind you. Can you tell us some of those things that are behind you?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. So this is one of the ones that we're going to be using for choking off for the thunder and lightning cloth. So this is 300 yards, and I think we've got 8 or 10 of these. So we're using macrame because it was thick. Don't tell anybody, okay. But we needed it really, really thick. So that's what that is. This one. So this is crazy. So George Washington is really an odd duck. So this is a piece, it's 3 different types of linen. This was part of a project we did for Mount Vernon to build a army cot for the American Revolution Museum in Philadelphia. It was a reproduction tent. This was going in it, I think, or no, this was the stuff for Mount Vernon. But the yarn is actually paint. It's not dye. And we looked at an original and we discovered it's lamp black, and I can't remember what the red is, but it had lead in it. And I'm like, I'm not going down that road. So we worked with our wheelwrights, because they do a lot of painting of carts and that sort of thing. And so we went out and we painted skein after skein after skein, and we got it on the loom and we wove it off with 3 different sized linen yarns, because the original was that way. And I made enough of it, and I knew this project going in, I'm making a whole bunch of this stuff because I'm never doing this again. This is kind of cool. It looks pretty simple. It's all linen. There's a book at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and it's a sample book. It's kind of like a catalog of samples that a mill produces. And it's a 1771 book, and it's geared to artisans, sailors, and the enslaved. And it's so rare. It's the only one that I know of that's geared to working people. And this is one of the samples in that book that we copied up. So I wear it on 4th of July. M's and O's, pretty simple. This is this black. It's a big twill. It's really heavy and thick. It's for horse blankets that we made for the horses. They never said thank you. This is, it looks pretty simple, but Queen Anne loved this. She loved this check. And so you'll see it as slip covers in the governor's palace. And we made a blue and white version for a historical home down in Charleston last year. So we did, and so he came to me and he goes, I need to make chair covers. I'm like, okay. I'm thinking just the chair seats. No, it was the whole chair. So I'm thinking, yeah, I can do like 6 yards, no worries. 60 yards later, we got it done.
Oh my gosh.
And then of course, our wig rose, one of the oldest patterns. And this is just a little sample from something we've done a while ago. But I just thought it's a comforting pattern. The one I don't like, I don't like at all is snail's trails. It's just weird, but because I hate slugs to begin with. So I think part of it's just subliminal.
The name, okay.
I did get invited to the Victoria and Albert Museum. John Stiles, the threads, Dress of the People, and he did Threads of Feeling with tokens. Mothers would leave with their children, and when they gave them over for care with somebody else. And if you wanted to claim your kid, sounds really bad. Claim your kid, that you would match up the tokens or the pieces of fabric. And so all of these records exist in the archives. And so we got talking, and he's invited me to England, and it was the first time Victoria and Albert got practitioners and academics together, like ever. And I'm like, can't you find a weaver in England, for crying out loud? I mean, I'm like, I'm honored, but so I went, and there was like 16 tables laid out. I got to look at stuff early. It was a real treat. I didn't embarrass the United States. But he had me make a 65 inch or ends per inch linen because of something he was doing. And sourcing that was almost impossible. And so I did make a run of that, a little run of that for what he was doing. But that was a really big honor to go over and do that. So yeah, some hooping fabric, which is tie dye. It's basically space dyed for false hips. I wish they'd bring that style back. And it covers your hoops that are like a cage that you would attach around your waist. And it's kind of like your pocketbook. You have a slit in your petticoat, you can reach in. There's one example of one lady that had such large hoops. She actually packed a tablecloth, 2 cups, a bottle of wine.
You're making this up.
Like pulled out a picture.
You have to be making this up.
So yeah.
All right. I need to ask you one more question, and then we have to stop, because this is such a good question. I wish I'd thought of it. A couple of people are asking about, where do you get your stuff from to dye? Is it from the land?
So we do have some, like we grow madder root. We're experimenting with indigo.
What kind of indigo? That was the other question.
Tinctura.
Okay.
The southern stuff. But we are also working with Japanese knotweed just to see if it produces. There's like 50 plants that have the indoxyl, which is that chemical. And I just call it a weed. So she's growing that for me at the garden. We have something called Dyer's mulberry or yellowwood. So we use the heartwood of that. And the rest, it's either I get stuff from Maywa. I've been getting a lot from Carol Lee, but she's she's retired or almost retired because she had really good prices. We did experiment with a place that does archival stuff out of New York City. I compared that with 4 other sources for cochineal, and it's funny. The cheapest stuff would work the best.
Huh.
So, it's knowing sources. Some of it I swap. It's like, hey, what do you got? Or bargain, or, the bargaining system is alive and well. We've been getting some stuff, food grade, for example, like alum, food grade. Because we go through pounds of it. I mean, pounds and pounds and pounds of it. And cream of tartar and that kind of thing. So we'll just get that out on Amazon. But in terms of the dye steps, like logwood, you have to import. And depending on what's going on, like with Brazil wood, I did get, a friend of mine had a source of a violin maker because it's a protected tree in South America. And so instruments are made out of it, like violins and that kind of thing. So I got a couple of bags of sawdust from their work.
Yeah.
I'm a scrounger.
Yeah,
so.
and a good one at that.
Yeah, so.
Well, I hate to do this, but we got to stop.
Oh, okay.
And there's tons of questions. I apologize to everybody. There were so many questions we didn't get to. I am so sorry, but we have to stop for today. And I have to thank you, Karen, for being on here. I could talk to you forever. This is fascinating. And again, if you are near Williamsburg this weekend, go see Karen and the dyeing she's doing. It's amazing. So she does have a Facebook page. It's karen.clancy.589. And I encourage you to look at all of her incredible images. You can go to the Williamsburg website also, and they talk a little bit about fiber and the programs there. Some people had questions about that. I encourage you to go to that website and check it out. Again, I want to thank the Williamsburg Weavers and Spinners Guild. And the reason why I mentioned pockets earlier, I was on their website, and they are doing that as a September, I hope they haven't done it already, a September event. I thought that was hilarious. They're doing a pocket theme, all kinds of pockets they're going to talk about and look at. Great idea, Guild, great idea. But we do want to thank them for sponsoring us today. We do appreciate it. If you want to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, your guild, you personally, your business, please go to our website at weavespindye.org, and you too can sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea. We want to thank you for all the support that we get. These programs happen because of donations through the Fiber Trust. So your support comes through giving a donation and also joining HGA. We are working on our 100 by 100. Our thermometer's coming up a little bit. We are looking for 100 donations of $100 or more before our 100th show, which will be November the 29th. It's hard to believe 100 episodes of Textiles and Tea will be November 29th. So please join us in our thermometer here, and let's see if we can make that donation limit by then. Spinning and Weaving Week's coming up. Ooh, quick too. I can't believe it. It's just in a couple of weeks. If you haven't signed up yet, please do. You can sign up and you get to attend all kinds of events for the whole week. You can also purchase going to some of the classes, the Art Sparks. We still have plenty of classes open and available. I encourage you to go to our website at weavespindye.org, and you can find out more. We've got sponsorships available, advertising opportunities, Thread Talks, Marketplace Live will be going, and of course the fashion show. That's Saturday. We are looking for people to come and strut their stuff. We will also be showing the runway fashion show from Convergence. One time only, we're going to show that as part of Spinning and Weaving Week. So be sure you you sign up and you'll get to see it if you weren't at Convergence. If anybody who was at Convergence will tell you, it was an amazing fashion show. You will love it. I want to thank you all again for coming. If you didn't you want to see this episode again or other episodes, you can watch them on our Facebook page. You can also sign up for YouTube. And if you subscribe, you'll get a notice saying that another episode has been uploaded. So you can check things out there. Next week, we have Janice Lessman Moss. If you think you know that name, she was at Kent State and she's a wonderful weaver. We're excited to have her next week. Thank you all for being here again. Thank you, Karen. It was so much fun. And I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Happy tea.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.